The bags appeared on the third Tuesday. That was when Reed Whitman knew something was wrong. From the balcony of his penthouse, 42 floors above the city, Reed watched the old man cross the marble foyer with 2 canvas bags slung over his shoulders. The man's back curved slightly under the weight. Not trash, not laundry, something heavier, something that mattered. The clock read 11:47 p.m., same time as last week, same bags. And just like before, the old man had arrived that morning with nothing in his hands. Reed didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply watched as the front door closed with a careful click, the kind made by someone who had spent a lifetime trying not to take up space. For 3 weeks, Reed had told himself it was nothing. Tonight, he knew better. Silas Turner had worked in Reed Whitman's house for 11 years. He was 68 years old, thin as winter branches, with silver hair he kept neatly combed and hands permanently marked by work. He fixed things before they broke, cleaned rooms that were already spotless, brewed coffee Reed often forgot to drink. Silas didn't talk much. He never asked questions, and he never, ever asked for more. Reed had hired him after a recommendation from an agency that specialized in long-term domestic staff. No criminal record, no debt issues, no family obligations listed. Clean, simple, invisible. That was what Reed liked. Silas arrived before sunrise every weekday. He left before midnight on the days Reed worked late. Holidays, weekends, storms, Silas showed up anyway. Quiet, reliable, replaceable. Or so Reed thought. What Reed never knew was that Silas used to be someone else. Before the gray hair, before the careful footsteps, before the silence, Silas Turner had once worked at the Harbor Steel Plant on the east side of the city. 32 years on the same line, same locker, same lunch pail. He raised 2 sons on that paycheck, bought a modest house, paid his taxes, believed in showing up. Then the plant shut down. The pensions disappeared. The jobs went overseas. The house followed soon after. Medical bills had a way of eating through savings faster than anyone expected. One son moved away and stopped calling. The other didn't make it past 40. By the time Silas found work again, the world had decided he was too old to matter. Except Reed Whitman. Reed didn't hire Silas because of kindness. He hired him because Silas was cheap, quiet, and dependable. And Silas took the job because hunger makes pride optional. For years, Silas said nothing. But every night, when he walked home through streets Reed had never bothered to name, Silas saw things that Reed never would from 42 floors up. Men sleeping on cardboard outside buildings worth millions. Women choosing between food and heat. Veterans begging beneath banners that read, "Progress is here." Silas remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere, and he remembered what it felt like to lose it. So he started small. 1 extra pot of soup, a loaf of bread tucked into his bag, coins dropped into a coffee can. Then more. The canvas bags came later. Silas used his paycheck, every spare dollar Reed never noticed, to cook meals at night in his tiny apartment. He carried them across the city to an abandoned rec center where people gathered because nowhere else would take them. He didn't call it charity. He called it responsibility. And tonight, as Silas stepped into the rain with the bags digging into his shoulders, he felt the familiar ache in his knees and something else. Eyes on his back. He didn't turn around. He already knew. Some truths don't stay hidden forever. And some men, especially powerful ones, don't react kindly when they realize the quiet old man they ignored has been living a life far larger than their own.
Before we go further, let me know where you're watching from. your city and state. Comment below. Hit subscribe to see what happens next. Silas Turner knew the moment the footsteps changed. For 12 years, he had walked these streets the same way, steady pace, eyes forward, never rushing. People like him learned early how to move without attracting attention. But tonight, the rhythm behind him was wrong. Too careful, too measured. Someone was following him. Silas didn't turn around. He never did. Panic wasted energy, and energy was something he didn't have much of these days. The bags cut into his palms as he adjusted his grip, rain soaking through the thin canvas. He kept walking. Reed Whitman stayed half a block back, heart pounding harder than he expected. He wasn't used to following anyone. People followed him. Assistants, analysts, city officials, everyone waited on his moves. But not this man. Silas Turner walked like someone who had nowhere else to be and all the time in the world. No phone, no umbrella, just an old coat and 2 heavy bags swinging gently at his sides. Reed told himself he was being cautious, but the truth sat uglier in his chest. He was afraid of what he might find. Silas turned down an unlit side street. Reed hesitated, then followed. The air smelled damp and metallic. Ahead, a building hunched between 2 abandoned storefronts, its brickwork cracked, its sign long gone. A single light glowed at the basement level. Silas stopped. Reed ducked behind a parked van as the old man knocked twice on a steel door. It opened immediately. Warmth spilled out. Light, voices, movement. Silas stepped inside. Reed waited 10 seconds, then 20. Then he moved. The basement wasn't large, but it was full. At least 30 people packed the space. Some sat on folding chairs, others stood along the walls. Children clutched plastic cups. Steam rose from battered stockpots balanced on folding tables. Reed froze. This wasn't a theft ring. This wasn't blackmail. This wasn't anything he'd imagined. Silas was already at the center of the room. The old man moved with a confidence Reed had never seen. He lifted lids, stirred pots, handed out bowls. People greeted him like family. "Evening, Mr. Turner." "Good to see you, Silas." "Thought you weren't coming tonight." Silas smiled, a real one. Deep lines creased his face. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. Reed's throat tightened. A woman with tired eyes reached for a bowl. Silas filled it carefully, adding an extra scoop of vegetables when he thought no one was watching. A man on crutches laughed at something Silas whispered. A child hugged his leg without asking permission. No fear, no distance, trust. Reed took an involuntary step forward. A floorboard creaked. Silas looked up. Their eyes met across the room. The noise faded. Conversation slowed. Silas didn't look startled. He looked resigned. He set the ladle down slowly and wiped his hands on a towel. "Everyone keep eating," Silas said calmly. "I'll be right back." He walked toward Reed. Each step felt heavier than the last. When he reached him, he stopped, standing straight despite the ache in his back. "You shouldn't be here," Silas said quietly. Reed swallowed. "I thought you were stealing from me." Silas nodded once. "That tracks. I followed you." "I know." Reed glanced around. "What is this?" Silas turned, surveying the room. "This is dinner." "That's not an answer." Silas met his gaze. His eyes were sharp, unafraid. "It's the only one that matters." Reed opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in years, words failed him. Silas leaned in slightly. "You want to know why I never asked you for help?" Reed said nothing. "Because men like you help when it's convenient, not when it's necessary." The words landed hard. Silas gestured to the room. "These people don't need pity. They need consistency, respect, someone who shows up even when no one's watching." Reed's chest burned. "I've been watching you," Silas added, "for years. You live above it all, so high up you don't hear the noise when people fall." Reed whispered, "I didn't know." Silas nodded again. "No, you didn't." A pause.
Then Silas picked up the ladle. "If you're going to stand there," he said, voice steady, "you might as well make yourself useful." Reed stared at the ladle, at the people, at the truth he couldn't escape, and for the first time in his life, Reed Whitman realized something terrifying. This old man, the one he barely noticed, had built something far more powerful than anything money could buy, and Reed had no idea how to be part of it.
Reed didn't touch the ladle. He stood there, sleeves of his coat still dry while everyone else's were damp from rain or sweat, feeling like a man who had wandered into the middle of a life he didn't earn. Silas noticed. "Sit," he said, nodding toward an empty folding chair. Reed hesitated. Then he sat. That small act, lowering himself to the same height as everyone else, felt heavier than signing a contract worth millions. Silas finished serving, then finally joined him. He moved slowly now, fatigue catching up. The room had quieted into the soft sounds of eating, spoons against plastic, murmured thanks, a child humming. Reed broke the silence. "You pay for all this?" Silas didn't answer right away. He watched a woman across the room tuck a napkin into her child's collar. "Yes," he said at last, "every week." "With my money," Reed said. Silas turned to him, not angry, not defensive, just honest. "No, with my money. You paid me what you thought I was worth." The words stung because they were true. Reed leaned forward. "Why didn't you say something? To me? To anyone?" Silas smiled faintly. "I did, just not to people who could afford not to listen." Reed frowned. "I don't understand." Silas's gaze drifted, past the walls, past the years. "I used to work steel," he said. 32 years. Harbor plant. Ever heard of it?" Reed shook his head. Silas nodded, unsurprised. "Most haven't, but half this room has." A man nearby lifted his bowl slightly in acknowledgement. Silas continued. "We built things that held cities together. Bridges, frames, support beams, stuff people don't think about until it fails." Reed felt a tightness in his throat. "They shut us down in a meeting that lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes to end 1,000 lives worth of routine." "What happened to you?" Reed asked. Silas let out a breath. "Life. Medical bills, a wife who got sick too fast, a house that went next, a son who couldn't handle watching his father shrink, another who stayed and paid the price for it." Silas didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. Reed stared at the floor. "I didn't come here to be a hero," Silas said. "I came here because I know what it feels like to disappear while the world keeps clapping for progress." Reed whispered, "I never meant for—" Silas raised a hand. "I know." That hurt more than anger would have. Silas stood with effort, stretching his back. "Here's the thing, Mr. Whitman. You didn't cause this, but you benefit from it every day." Reed looked up. "So what do you want from me?" Silas met his eyes. "Nothing." The answer hit harder than any demand. "I didn't follow you to ask for forgiveness," Silas added, "and I didn't build this to make a point. I did it because someone had to." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Reed swallowed. "I can help." Silas studied him carefully now, weighing something invisible. "You can," he said, "but help that comes from guilt doesn't last." "I'm not guilty," Reed said quickly, then stopped. "I think." Silas nodded. "Exactly." The steel door creaked open slightly as someone stepped in late. Drip rained onto the concrete. Silas greeted them by name, handed them a bowl without missing a beat. Reed watched. This wasn't charity. This was infrastructure, and Silas Turner was its quiet backbone. When the meal wound down, people began stacking chairs, wiping tables, helping without being asked. No signs, no slogans, just habit. Reed stood. "What happens if I shut this down?" Silas faced him calmly. "Then it ends." Reed's chest tightened.
"And you?" Silas said. "I go home, and tomorrow I come back to work, same as always." The certainty in his voice was unshakable. Reed realized something then, something terrifying. Silas didn't need him. Reed had never experienced that before. As Reed turned to leave, Silas spoke again. "If you want to help," Silas said, "don't do it for me." Reed paused. "Do it," Silas finished, "because one day, when all your money is done talking, this is what will still be standing." Reed stepped out into the rain, the city suddenly louder, closer, heavier. For the first time, he understood what it meant to live above the noise, and what it would cost to come back down.
Reed didn't sleep that night. His penthouse felt smaller than ever, even with all the glass and chrome. He stared at the city sprawled below, a glittering maze that promised everything and gave almost nothing. By morning, he had made a decision. He arrived at the center before Silas. Security buzzed through the intercom as he stepped past the gate, rain still glinting on the pavement. "I'm here to help," Reed said, almost too quickly. Silas raised an eyebrow, stirring a pot of stew. "You don't need to be here yet." "I do," Reed said. I've got resources, connections. I can get more food, better equipment, more volunteers." Silas listened, but said nothing. "I can expand this," Reed went on, "cover more people, faster." Silas shook his head slowly. "Faster isn't always better. Sometimes it's worse." Reed frowned. "Worse? How?" A child dropped her bowl, shattering it on the floor. Everyone froze. Silas bent to pick it up, carefully, while Reed stood awkwardly. "This," Silas said quietly, "disruption. Every week, every volunteer, every donor, we build trust in small increments. If you try to speed it up, you break it. People get scared. People leave." Reed's confidence faltered. "But I'm just trying to help." "Exactly," Silas said, "and that's why it hurts the most when it goes wrong." 2 days later, Reed arranged a large donation event. Local media, catering, new volunteers, everything flashy, impressive. By noon, chaos unfolded. Volunteers overwhelmed with instructions. Food ran out before everyone was fed. The elderly were squeezed into corners, too many people too fast. Someone fainted, someone argued, someone stole a bag of supplies in the confusion. Reed panicked. He tried to fix it, but each step made it worse. Silas arrived late, calm as ever. He surveyed the scene. One glance, and he knew the pattern. Good intentions gone unchecked. "See?" Silas said, softly, almost to himself. Reed turned to him, desperate. "I just wanted to—" "Help," finished Silas. "I know. And now people are hurt because you didn't understand what help really means." Reed looked around. Faces were wet, not just from rain, but from frustration, fear, disappointment. Silas crouched beside one elderly woman, adjusting her blanket. "You can't fix everything at once," Silas said. "Some things need patience, habit, routine. You can't just throw money at people and call it care. You have to show up week after week, sometimes for decades, until the world forgets to notice you're standing there." Reed swallowed, tasting his failure. Silas stood. "You've got heart, Mr. Whitman, but heart without discipline can burn down more than it builds." Reed nodded, ashamed. "So what now?" Silas pointed to the volunteers quietly reorganizing, guiding the confused, cleaning up. "Now you step back, watch, learn, then you act again, but on their terms, not yours." Reed understood, painfully, that real power
wasn't in flashy gestures. It was in consistency, in patience, in quiet persistence. And if he wanted to make a difference, he had to let go of his ego first. The rain stopped. Outside, the city gleamed, indifferent. Inside, a small center hummed with life that Reed had almost destroyed, but hadn't. Silas's words echoed. Help that comes from guilt doesn't last. Help that comes from understanding, maybe that does. Reed left that day, drenched in humility and new resolve. And for the first time, he realized that building something real didn't need approval, applause, or headlines. It needed patience and a backbone like Silas Turner.
Weeks passed. Reed returned to the center, quieter now. No grand gestures, no flashy donations. He showed up, rain or shine, helping clean, distribute food, check on the elderly, listen to the kids. Silas watched him, sometimes nodding, sometimes silent, letting Reed find his rhythm. At first, people still looked at him suspiciously. Some whispered, "Isn't he the rich guy who messed things up before?" But slowly, they noticed he didn't leave when it got messy. He didn't argue when they questioned him. He stayed. One evening, a crisis arrived. A fire broke out in a nearby building. Smoke spread quickly. The center became a refuge for dozens of displaced families. Panic rose, and volunteers froze, unsure how to handle so many people at once. Reed felt his old instinct: take control, organize, fix everything immediately. But then he saw Silas, calmly directing people to safety, assigning small, manageable tasks to volunteers. Reed paused. He inhaled, and for the first time, he followed instead of leading blindly. He guided children to the back rooms. He helped elders to chairs and blankets. He coordinated with other volunteers quietly, efficiently. No one panicked under his hands, because he wasn't trying to show off. He was just helping. By the time the fire trucks arrived, everyone in the center was safe. Families huddled together, volunteers exhausted but proud. Silas approached Reed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "See what happens when you let patience and discipline lead?" Reed nodded, genuinely this time. I get it now." Days later, the center celebrated its one-year anniversary, not with media cameras or fancy donations, but with a simple meal, music, and laughter. Reed looked around, seeing familiar faces, people who had once doubted him, now smiling and thanking him. He realized that real impact wasn't measured in headlines or numbers. It was measured in trust, in small moments repeated over time, in being present when no one else noticed. Silas leaned beside him. "You've come far, Reed, but remember, this is just the start. You've learned the hardest lesson. Care is quiet. Care is consistent. Care doesn't need recognition. It needs endurance." Reed smiled, finally at peace. He had burned, stumbled, and nearly failed, but now he understood. The real work was never about him. It was about everyone else. And for the first time in his life, Reed Whitman felt like he truly belonged. Outside, the city glittered in the evening light, indifferent, yet somehow softer. Inside, the center hummed with life, the proof that persistence and humility could indeed change the world, one small, meaningful act at a time. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who teach us the most. See you in the next story.